You might have read that the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo in Colorado Springs was voted the #4 best zoo in the United States. But in comparison to a lot of the best zoos in the US, like San Antonio and San Diego, the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo is a lot smaller, a lot less famous, but people love this place, and I'm going to show you why. This is one of those places where planning ahead will make your trip that much better, so you're doing it right by doing some research. I want you and your family to have an awesome time here, so keep watching because I'm going to share a bunch of important tips that will help you get the most out of your trip here. Let's head to the zoo. A couple things really make this zoo stand out: the amazing location and views, and also how close you can get to the animals. If you've seen pictures or TikToks of the zoo, you've probably already seen the views, and they are pretty great here. This is kind of what you want a Colorado zoo experience to be like. It's a lot better than the Denver Zoo, which I live much closer to. But because of that mountain location, the zoo isn't flat, but don't worry, it's not like San Francisco or Lisbon hilly. It's totally manageable with the stroller if you're bringing small kids, but you will be going up a decent amount. And of course, if you're visiting from sea level, you might feel a little bit winded from the elevation as you're making your way through the zoo. It's not just you. Now let's talk about the animals, because this can really change your experience. To get the most out of your trip to the zoo, I would plan your visit around the animal schedules, and I'll explain. A lot of people talk about and post videos of the giraffes here, and they're great, even with all their drool, but that's like the baseline of animal encounters here. If you do this right, you can actually get a lot more out of your trip to the zoo. If you go to the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo website and hit plan a visit, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the animals' daily schedules. And don't worry, I'll also drop a link in the description and at the end of this video so you can start doing your research. When you go to that part of the website, that's when you'll find what time you can do other things like feed elephants and feed a rhino, and you can also figure out the things that happen all day like feeding giraffes, goats, and birds. There are also times for a lot of demonstrations where you can get even closer to the animals than you already do, and I'll show more of that in a second. Especially if you're coming to visit, using that schedule can be very helpful to know what time you should go to the zoo and also what day you should go, because that daily schedule changes. Also, just a heads up, there's like a 50% chance that you're gonna get pooped on during the bird feeding thing, so don't be like looking up with your mouth open, and it's a little tough to do with small kids. Most of the feedings cost $5 or $10, and they only take cash, so it's a good idea to stop by the ATM in like the gas station on your way there to save yourself a bunch of time, because otherwise everybody's using the same ATM that's near the giraffes. Because some of these feedings and demonstrations only happen like once or twice a day, it's a really good idea to check that out before you buy tickets for a time slot. So for example, we missed the rhino feeding the last time we went to the zoo. It started 30 minutes after we were gonna get there. We should have really just gone straight there, but our son really wanted to feed the giraffes. We missed the rhino by like 3 minutes. So if there's something you really want to do, like feed the elephants, you can go do that first and then come back to the things that happen all day, like feeding the goats or giraffes. If you're enjoying this video on the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo so far, please give it a like so that the YouTube algorithm will show it to more people who are doing their research. Also, I make a lot of videos like this, and I'd love to hit 10,000 subscribers this year. If this video is helpful, hit that subscribe button. Now let's head back to the zoo. Even if you're not into those animal encounters or the schedules just don't work out with what you're doing, it's all good. You're still gonna have a great time. Like I mentioned, you can get really close up to the animals even if you don't pay extra for it. Wallabies are just hopping around. You can actually pet them if they get close enough to you, and sometimes there are baby wallabies who are hanging out in a pouch or just hopping around on their own. Also, if you get lucky like us, sometimes the penguins are just rolling deep with a big squad after a swim. It's so cool to have your kids get really up close with them as they waddle around. Our 3-year-old was excited about seeing penguins in the first place, but I don't think that he realized he was going to get that close to them. In other parts of the zoo, check out how this mountain lion literally walks over me, and he does it a few times. This is a pretty typical experience in this zoo. If you've been to zoos where you're just so far away from the animals, or they're sleeping all day and your kids are having a hard time seeing them, this is not that kind of zoo. Like the San Antonio Zoo, the animals are pretty active here and they have a lot of room to roam. Whether you want to see the elephants, alligators, or gorillas, you will have no problem seeing them up close during your visit. Some people skip these, but the indoor spaces at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo are actually pretty nice. I know that at some zoos, it's not really the main attraction of the zoo, but there's some pretty cool stuff inside. Like if you don't catch the penguins outside, they're probably inside swimming around. There's also a hippo and a big area with gorillas and other monkeys. And also check out this sloth who's in one of the indoor areas, as he did this slow motion Zootopia show climbing around on his rope. And this was really a highlight to everybody who was watching this sloth. Like, how great is this? This is the way the sloth makes their way over to their bed. You gotta get a little lucky with the sloth, but if you catch them, it's awesome. And if you're into them, there are a lot of cool lizards and iguanas and things like that. There are also a lot of huge snakes, not my favorite thing in the world, but they have them there too. So if the weather isn't great, or you just need a break from either the cold or the sun, depending on what time of year you're coming, the indoor spaces have a lot to offer. Now let's get to a few other quick but very important things. For most families, I would plan to be here for about 2 to 3 hours, and you'll still have plenty in the tank to do something else that day. It's not an all-day exhausting thing like the San Diego Zoo, and you won't really need a map to navigate because there's a pretty logical loop to get around the zoo. I probably wouldn't do the zoo and something like Garden of the Gods on the same day because it would just be a lot of walking, but this plus a nice meal or hanging out with friends, no problem. Right when you enter, you'll get some coins where you can support conservation efforts for different animals. It's raised millions of dollars, and it's a nice feel-good way to start your trip to the zoo. Especially if your kids love a particular type of animal, you'll get multiple coins so you can distribute them however you want, and they can feel good about supporting the animals they love. Let's not forget that the zoo is on a mountain. Even locals can forget that the temperature is going to be about 10 degrees cooler at the zoo compared to the weather in Denver or Colorado Springs. And of course, at over 6,000 feet of elevation, the sun is about 20% more intense here, so if you're visiting from out of town, it's a good idea to put on some sunblock. One of the other unique parts of the zoo is the Mountaineer Sky Ride, which is, like a ski chair lift. It costs about $5 and gives you some awesome views. It pretty much runs all summer, but the schedule does change in the fall and winter to be mostly weekend only. This is something you can check on the website before you go. If you're hungry after walking around at the zoo, there are actually some pretty decent sit-down places for food, including pizza, barbecue, and they even have a real coffee bar. It's nice to have food options that aren't just like popcorn and high fructose corn syrup. Personally, I'd rather get some good Korean food in Colorado Springs, but that's another video for another day. It's nice to have some real food options, especially if you're rolling deep with your family. Whether you live in Colorado or you're coming here for a visit, I hope that this video helps you have an awesome time at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. In case you're visiting Denver, I'll link to a few more videos that will help you plan your trip, and I'll also link to that daily schedule for the zoo as well. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you see it all at the zoo, and I'll catch you on another video.